Hey folks, excellent to hear your expertise and your experience. I really love it. So question, a lot of conversation about diversity. One of the challenges I feel is challenging us as a, corporate America is we focus a lot on the kind of, as Florina said, the 10 key areas of a diversity about gender and race and color and religion and things like that. But obviously diversity is much broader than that. So how do we measure like cognitive diversity? Because that's more than just numbers. That's one. And the second is inclusion. How are you guys measuring inclusion? Because in some ways it's more important than just diversity.
Well, yeah, we have generational diversity, and so as you've heard in some of the earlier speakers' comments, generations emphasize different aspects of diversity based on their lived experience. So the boomers and the folks who lived through civil rights in those areas, those categories of diversity that were the basis for which many people and populations were discriminated against are front and center in their minds because they lived through that on a personal basis and or their parents did. So it's personal, and so that's why it's front and center. And we get that. But as we are now into new generations that are living a different experience and connecting on a global basis routinely, they're much more attuned to the issues of cognitive diversity, personality, diversity, and so forth, because when you're spending a lot of time globally interacting with people, many of whom you only know in a virtual sense, those are the things that stand up and come up as ideas. So I think the key is in inclusion from a cultural standpoint and a value add standpoint is embracing all of that. So the people who are leading the D&I work have to really have a framework for diversity that is broader than just ethnic categories. And the point I really want to make, though, but it's an inclusion, those things, as opposed to a binary approach. We're not talking about these things anymore. We're only going to talk about cognitive diversity, et cetera, et cetera. All of it has value when we talk about the value that diversity of experience and thought and cognitive brings. Much of that is shaped by people's lived experiences, and people's lived experiences is significantly influenced by what they look like, how people react to what they look like, their gender, and so on. So it's all together. So I don't create false or artificial separations. I talk about embracing all of it, and all of it can be adding value if, again, we're coming from an inclusive orientation, seeing value in difference, overcoming fear, and leveraging it to get complex problem solving done with the best ideas, because everybody's looking at the problem from a different perspective, and that's an asset as opposed to a liability.
Go ahead.
Yeah. So from the HP perspective, we look at, and one is not more heavily weighted than the other. We are about diverse perspectives. Diverse perspectives do come from gender, and it does come from ethnic representation. It also comes from multinationalism. And so we do business in 170 countries across the globe. So it's important for us to be representative of the different religions, the different cultures that are represented at HP, and again in our customer base, who we sell to and who we partner with. How we measure is we look at, and our whole diversity strategy is around what we call the big strategy. It's about belong, innovate, and grow. If you get people in, you've got to first get the diversity in those diverse perspectives. And you have to nurture an environment and a culture where people can thrive and truly feel like they are included and have a sense of belonging. Ultimately, those people are able to innovate better, they're more creative, and that impacts them as an individual and their growth and development, but also the bottom line. So how we measure that is we have what we call a voice in action survey that we do annually, and then we do pulse surveys on a regular basis around belonging. One of the simple questions on that is, do you feel like you can be a part of and bring your ideas to the table? Do you feel like you have a place to belong within your organization? And we take that measurement very seriously. Not to mention the plethora of programs that we have that really help nurture inclusion and belonging within our workplace.
I'm going to do the last question there in the back.
Hi, hello. I have a question, I guess, for some context. I work in tech, so this is kind of a question that reflects on the interesting pushback in the tech industry. So I heard one of you, I think from HP, when you were talking about your diversity targets, it sounded a lot like quotas. So one of the things that we hear a lot in the tech industry is that instituting quotas is reverse discrimination, and it lowers the bar. And I know, I think we had a guy at Google who wrote a paper and got fired because he actually stated that and questioned those policies. So what do you say to your employees when they bring up, or when they push back on diversity programs with those arguments?
So first of all, let me be very clear. When we set out, our mission was to develop the most diverse board of directors. It wasn't about putting targets or quotas in place. And if it were, oh well, we did it. And as a result of it, we've been very successful. But more importantly than that, we do put out aspirational goals. We do business in, some might call them very obscure places, at times that may not warrant the attraction to some of the diverse targets that we're looking for, or diverse perspectives that we might recruit to. Places like Corvallis, Oregon, and Boise, Idaho, and others. And so it is very important to us to have a balanced workplace. As far as pushback goes, we have a very dedicated, very committed, and very passionate leadership team. Where we seem to get stuck is in that kind of middle, that frozen middle that we often talk about. And so a lot of the work that we're doing is to really kind of unstick that middle, or defrost them in a way where we do more programs around, because we see the direct benefit of the diversity that we have in our organization. It is not all about ethnicity. It's not all about gender. We bring age and gender. I mean, it's everything, to be honest with you. And so as we look at diversifying our workplace, we look at honoring the different perspectives that we bring to the table. And to be really transparent with you, I think that the culture has evolved to a place that if you're not signed up to that, you'll probably eventually self-select out of it.
I need to wrap us up, but I just want to say a quick response to that, because I feel like that's sort of, it's part of why we started the Gender Leadership Group, is to come in and talk to that frozen middle of people who look like me and try to help them see the possibilities of being involved. And I think Michael Kimmel does a really good job of saying the pie grows. It's not one piece that you're taking out, it's a growing of the whole pie. And part of why we use the word engaging men is because that's the goal, right? If we can see it as we're all on the same team to grow this pie together, getting men involved in that helps with the pushback, right? Helps them see themselves as part of the team. So I just want to thank you all for being part of this. There's going to be more opportunity to ask them questions in the lobby, et cetera. And thank you so much for all of your expertise.